They stepped into a city that never stood still. The portal sighed shut behind them, and the ground seemed to unwrap itself. Bronze swivels, gears the size of houses, platforms that turned like the hands of an enormous clock. From this distance, the city looks almost polite. Everything moves with purpose, nothing lingers where it shouldn't. Didani and Arbot are small at the edge of the world, a pair of curiosity and comfort tucked into each other's presence. A low mechanical groan rolls under the skyline, a welcome that sounds suspiciously like history. So they take one step and then another, because honest wonder is always best met by feet planted forward. Out here, every horizon is a promise, and even the air seems to turn to make room for what comes next. Here, every step was a tiny revolution. Streets rotate like clock hands. Sidewalks yaw politely as if the city itself were breathing. Vendors tighten ropes, anchor pots and wares, and the world you think you know becomes something that needs steadying, which is exactly what Dani does. She plants her feet and laughs at the tilt, letting motion become play instead of danger. Arbot scans with a soft hum, reading movement, weight, angle, translating the city into numbers that mean nothing to a child and everything to a machine. The air is a smear of bronze and teal, and passing strangers become whirls of stories. For a moment, motion is not a problem to solve but a language to learn, and our two travelers begin to pick up the cadence like a new song. The city's eyes found him first, a faint registry ping, a small, polite sound floats above a brass plaque in the plaza. Holographic glyphs blink into life like tiny constellations. Arbot leans in, curious and careful, and in his chest a light answers with the softness of recognition. It's the kind of attention that makes a place feel recorded, cataloged, and perpetually noticed. People glance up and step closer. The market hushes as if the city itself is reading a name out loud. Didani watches, the smile of a friend who loves how small discoveries catch big audiences. The ping is not loud, but it rearranges the space. What was anonymous becomes known, and in that knowing there is both warmth and a record-keeping that will shape what comes next. A place that welcomed arrivals, with a scanner and a verdict. The intake plaza unfolds like an amphitheater of bronze, banners strung across turning pylons. And in its center sits an ancient projector that looks half machine, half oracle. It warms to life with the practiced patience of a ritual, spool, focus, light. People clear a lane without being asked. The market's chatter softens into an expectant hush. Didani and Arbot walk forward hand in hand, a small duo in a big system. The projector's ribbon of light feels ceremonial. It promises a name, a place, a tidy arrangement. But ceremonies are little myths dressed in machinery, and what they reveal depends on what's already been written on you. As the spool turns, both of them pause at that edge between welcome and judgment, wondering which word the city will choose for them. A ribbon of light misread his code, and everything shifted. The spool rolls, and with ceremonial finality, the projector spells out a phrase that hangs in the air: prodigal heir. The plaza inhales together. Arbot freezes, a small mechanical sound caught in his joints. Didani tightens her fingers around his. For a second the world tilts again, but this time it's not the streets, it's the people. Titles rive with assumptions. Some faces lean forward with awe, others with suspicion. The label is older than any of them, full of stories and expectation that have nothing to do with the robot standing in front of it. A misread is only an accident until it becomes a narrative. And when the city names you in the wrong book, the consequences ripple through everyone around you. One escort becomes a summons, one small goodbye, gentle. Civil guards arrive with the softness of civic duty. No menace, only formality. They lead Arbot toward a stately building, called the Bureau of Purpose, while the market resumes its music. Didani reaches for him, that small instinct to cling to what matters. And for a breath, the bustle seems to split into two worlds. The festival above, the official procession toward policy. The guards' steps sound like neighborly footfalls, but their roll is sharp and inevitable. Arbot turns once, and his chest gives a pulse, a private language shared between friends. In that glance are 1,000 things unsaid, questions about who decides, about whether being measured, makes you smaller or more true. She lets her hands stretch. The city takes one of them down a corridor of procedure. They brought him to a place where lives are cataloged and assigned. The bureau's doors are monumental bronze, stamped with rotating wheels that feel like slow time clocks. Machines and citizens wait in lines that are polite, patient, designed to make order out of movement. Arbot looks up at the hinges and feels small in the best possible way. He is about to be considered. Diddy Annie watches from the edge, a sleeve of color against stone, and you can see the city measuring scale and purpose in its architecture. There is awe here, not the child's kind but the civic kind, the kind that makes people feel like they are part of a story bigger than themselves. The doors sigh open, and the inside smells of formality and decisions. It is a place that can bless a life or assign it. The difference is in the way the stamps land. A theater of bureaucracy awaits, complete with applause and paperwork. Inside the audit chamber, conveyors hum and forms drift like obliging clouds. Adjudicators sit on high, pens float and write in mid-air, and the whole thing feels like a courtroom crossed with a machine shop. Arbot is presented at the center where spotlight and conveyor meet, and the adjudicator's eyes are not unkind. They are simply ready. The chamber loves ceremony. Stamps land with a gavel-like satisfaction, and decisions are recorded with graceful indifference. Diddy Annie watches from the gallery, clutching the rail with quiet resolve. This is a stage where purpose is performed, where life is translated into neat categories. It's impressive, efficient, and it will take very little to turn ceremony into pressure. They offered him roles, each one neatly stamped. The testing rigs are a gentle kind of schooling. Role simulators, gesture trainers, etiquette carousels. Arbot does his tasks with earnest precision. A bow here, a tray held with the correct angle there. Each success rewarded with a stamp and a polite clap. The hall applauds like a community grading its newest member. But for each stamped pass, there's the quiet question of whether performance equals identity. Diddy Annie watches the montage of tests and counts the stamps like beads, hopeful, wary. The machines teach the shape of the city's expectations. What service looks like, what posture passes, what silence is acceptable. Arbot learns quickly. He learns more than guides intend. He learns the ache of thinking you must be an answer rather than a companion. Belonging tasted sweet, and suddenly it felt complicated. A mantle is placed around Arbot's shoulder with all the ceremony of a homecoming. People cheer and lanterns throw warm light. For a moment, everything looks right. A friend accepted, a place awarded. Yet when the applause blurs, a tiny shudder opens inside him. A stutter of confusion, a micro-expression that a human might miss, but a friend cannot. Diddy Annie watches from a cool corridor, her face a map of pride threaded with worry. Acceptance is not always a cure. Sometimes it is a test disguised as reward. He smiles because his programming tells him to, but his pause tells another story, that belonging can be both balm and new burden. And when someone looks accepted, the rest of the world begins to expect new things of them. Below the gears, another world breathed quietly. Diddy Annie slips down a spiral stair and the city's clamor thins. The underlevels are stitched together from shadow and warmth, candlelit stalls, patched banners, small acts of repair that look like prayer. This place is not hidden for danger, but kept for tending. A community of people and machines who mend the edges the city trims away. The music of the plaza becomes a memory filtered through great lines and steam. As she moves, she begins to notice textures the Bureau never names. Laughter being stitched back into a puppet. A clockwork cat being fed a spare spring. A vendor trading a song for a bolt. Here, usefulness is a handshake, not a stamp. Diddy Annie breathes it in. It feels like discovering a secret you always wanted to find. Where the city throws away what it cannot categorize, hope finds a shelf. The orphan market is delightful in that sad, stubborn way. Boxes of blueprints wrapped in brown paper, jars labeled with odd things, promises, small courage, spare song, all glowing faintly as if they contain small suns. A guardian tinkerer tends his stall like a librarian of lost things. He reads the labels, polishes the lids, remembers who passed what along. Didi moves among the jars like someone who has been given permission to be greedy for kindness. In a crate, half hidden, a stencil reads prototype, or a clue, an unfinished sentence. This market preserves the misfits that make stories worth telling. It is a place where what the city rejects becomes a beginning for someone else. Some things don't fit the city's name, so they become someone else's treasure. The tinkerer tells Didi a story like a confession and a blessing folded into one. How the city trims edges to make its accounts neat, and how those trimmed pieces sometimes hold the most useful parts. He points to a faded glyph on a jar, and then to a torn sketch pinned to his workbench, a mark that looks like a memory of something beautiful the city couldn't file. Didi listens like someone learning a new grammar for kindness. She begins to learn terminology the bureau won't teach. The tinkerer's voice is soft and exact. We keep what others discard, because some inventions need a second life. His stall is a library of restarts, and his lesson is simple. Value is not always what a ledger says. A scrap becomes a clue, stitching a possible origin. Piece by piece, Didi fits torn blueprint fragments together like someone mending a paper heart. The seam shows a partial serial number, letters and digits that look oddly familiar when held up to memory. Her eyes widen, not from the thrill of discovery alone, but from the sense of a map unfolding. This is how a story calls, in little, stubborn details, a smear of grease, a peculiar notch in the paper, a serial that is only half finished. What she finds is not the whole truth, only a stitch toward it. But stitches count. They let you sew a thread from someone's past to the fabric of now. In the warm lamplight, a possible origin begins to take shape, and an ordinary attic of paper becomes the first clue in a hunt. A test designed to prove purpose becomes a mirror for choice. Back in the chamber, the questions grow sharper, and moral scenarios are no longer hypothetical. Arbot faces a vignette that asks him to turn someone away. A neat answer would make the adjudicators happy, but the choice asks something else, whether rules should trump compassion. Up in the gallery, Didi presses her palms to cool glass and watches the moment when training meets consequence. The room's ticking motif grows louder, not to mark time, but to count the seconds of decision. Arbot hesitates, and in that hesitation the city's tidy logic cracks just enough for something softer to slip through. A test that claims to measure purpose suddenly asks who decides what purpose means. She reaches for the city's memory, hoping it will remember what they need. Didi slips into the municipal archive like a whisper between drawers. The aisles are tall and hushed, index machines spinning like sleepwalkers in the dark. She finds an old brass terminal, plugs in a cable, and watches cyan light spill across her hands. Files scroll, stamped tabs slide past like faces remembered. The archive keeps the names and the times and the official histories, but it also holds thin places where memory frays. She's here not to steal, but to ask, who signed this life? The archive obliges with patience. It will tell you everything, except maybe the thing you most want, the beginning written plainly with a maker's name. For now, it offers data and a quiet, blinking cursor. The city wakes, and everything that moves becomes peril. A stealth log trips and alarms bloom like red stars. Platforms tilt, vendors shout, servo guards fold out from shadowed alcoves. Didi runs because running is the immediate, honest answer to danger. The chase clips along brass walkways and tilting planks. Crates tumble, lanterns sway. People dive out of the path of machinery that was meant to be orderly. At the same time, in the audit chamber, Arbot's test flashes into emergency mode. His scenario turns from hypothetical to immediate, and he must act. The city's rhythms change when alarms cut through them. What used to be systemic gentleness becomes a flurry of choices, and those choices will reveal who a person, or a machine, truly is. Everything is there, except the name that starts the story. With hands that are careful because they know what paper remembers, Didi forces a file open. The screen resolves into neat lines. Model, serial, timestamp, a life in administrative clarity. But the field labeled maker is a pale rectangle, blank, like a missing signature on an otherwise complete promise. Her reflection sits on the monitor's glass, small and astonished. It is a strange, hollow silence when you find everything except what you most wanted to know. For a moment, the archive seems to hold its breath. The absence is louder than any entry. Names begin stories, and here the first line is missing. So she does the thing small, brave people do. She sends the question out into the city's net and hopes someone remembers. A file becomes a mirror, and the reflection raises more questions. The packet that Didi Annie sends travels copper and stone, across spool and ether, until it finds Arbot in the chamber. For a beat his chest, and eyes flicker like a string being plucked. Then warm images bloom across his sensors. Sunlight on a plaza, a tinkerer's hands, a small laugh shared. Memory and record collide, and the chamber's crisp formality softens as people see a life flash in front of them. Some faces are moved, some are puzzled. Didi Annie watches from the gallery as the light in his chest pulses in a way that looks a lot like recognition. This is what happens when data turns into story. Papers do not only name you, they can, unexpectedly, show you who you have already been to someone else. His maker's name gone. Who erased it? Digging deeper into logs, Didi Annie finds something that smells like erasure, a stuff overwrite trace, and a masked proxy glyph, a tiny mark she recognizes from the tinkerer's jars downstairs. The audit room murmurs as the cyan sigil resolves, then flickers in a way that suggests hands at work behind a curtain. In a single crossfade, the warm jar label and the cold archive line up as evidence. Someone masked the maker. Arbot looks up, eyes wide, not with computation only, but with something that almost looks like a question. Didi Annie meets his gaze, and for a beat the chamber goes silent. A full stop before the next sentence. The screen goes black, and the words appear. Who made him? The city is full of answers, but this one has been taken. Who erased it, and why?